Alright, looks like we are live on this wonderful Christmas day. Yep, looks like it's working. Good. So, welcome everybody. Hope you are doing well. I am really, really sore. I don't know why, but, well, I kind of know why. Right? So, because I've been sick the last couple of weeks, I've kind of quarantined myself away from the rest of the family to, prevent, especially getting the wife sick. And for the most part, that's worked. But it also means that instead of sleeping in my bed, I've had to sleep in this chair. And so it's, hard to keep my neck in a good ergonomic position while sleeping when sleeping in a chair. And so unfortunately I have a really bad pulled muscle on this side of my neck. It's just driving me absolutely crazy. I see Mike Richards first in the house with Zort, slightly misspelt. And Miss Moneypenny says Merry Christmas. I hope you are doing well, Miss Moneypenny. Mercer is here. Good to see you. Orville Nation. Hey, PJ. Hope you're doing well. So when is that horrible Orville season 4 supposed to come? Or is that just one of your wishful fantasies? And thank you, PJ. Says get well soon. I think I'm on the tail end of this, but it's, the thing that sucks is that, since I have to suppress my immune system to treat the MS, it means that when I get sick, it just lasts longer. And I just wish that wasn't the case. Mercer's been sick for a week and a half. I'm sorry, Mercer. I know that's no fun. Darren Wagner in the house says Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too, Darren. Orville saying hi to everybody. Mercer trying to say Orville's a good show. Well, it's a matter of opinion. You and Orville Nation certainly feel that way. No, I know that I've heard people say that, oh yeah, it's official, there's going to be a season 4. I haven't heard anything, so I'm just curious, since you would obviously pay more attention to that if there is anything official on what's going on there. And if they do a season 4, I hope that they at least learn from their mistakes of season 3. Because season 3, in my opinion, was absolutely horrible. Season 1 and 2 had their entertaining moments, even if it was a bit preachy. But season 3 was, in my opinion, just awful. Let's see. Mert says they're starting it in January. So they're starting airing it, or they're starting production, or they're starting shooting, or they're starting... What is it? Daniel says, hi. Good to see you, Daniel. Fuzzy Door is working on it. What does that mean? I'm not even sure. Darren says, I liked Orville better when it was Star Trek with dick and fart jokes. If they went back to that, I'd be down for a 4th season. Yeah, it was. That's kind of what the first 2 seasons were, especially the first season, was Star Trek The Next Generation with dick and fart jokes. And like I said, that, they had their entertaining moments, even if the show was a little overtly preachy. But I thought season 3 was just, if I started watching season 4 and it turned out to be just like season 3, I would have a very difficult time getting through more than one episode. Mike says, because of the heart transplant, I've been immunity suppressed for 19 years. Oh man, no, that's no joke, buddy. So yeah, and, so you got to be careful, The thing that sucks is since the way that I supplement my Social Security is through Uber primarily, I'm constantly exposing myself to other people. And in fact, I was so angry the other day. I was taking, this was yesterday actually, I was taking these ladies from grandma's house back to their house, and their little girl was there. And the whole time, the whole 20-minute drive, the little girl was just coughing and coughing and coughing. And the mom just kept saying, cover your mouth, cover your mouth. Didn't actually do anything, just kept saying, cover your mouth every time she was coughing because she obviously wasn't covering her mouth. And it's like, oh, jeez, if this girl gets me sick again, I'm going to be so mad. And Orville Nation seems to be agreeing they need to keep the humor. Well, Mercer says filming. Okay. And is that official or is that rumor mill stuff? Because, like I said, I haven't heard a thing. It's not like Disney's been talking about it or anything. So, since it's their property. Because... See, when I do a quick search for it, it says there's nothing confirmed. According to Screen Rant, says Orville season 4 may be in limbo, but that doesn't stop the quirky sci-fi's dedicated from demanding to know when Captain Ed Mercer and the rest of the USS Orville will return. So that's why I ask if you are, Mercer, when you say, oh, they're filming in a month, where did you hear that? Did you hear it from an official source, or is it just some YouTuber that doesn't know what they're talking about, basically spouting some wishful thinking? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of that on YouTube, not just with the Orville. I mean, look at the Phantom Menace type people, and their whole thing with, because of like 5 frames of film from the finale of Lower Decks, they think that all of a sudden Star Trek Discovery is not canon. And whatever. I got my fan home USS Stargazer ship the other day. I hate the ship, but I love the quality of the model, so I will be keeping it. Okay. You hate the ship. Oh, is it the newer version? Because I thought you liked the Stargazer. So is it the newer version of the Stargazer, the one from Picard? Orville says Fuzzy Door is Seth's company. Gotcha. Okay. Are you ever going to use the... that's not quite right. I think it's... I'm not even sure what that is, but you're talking about the objective-subjective review format. I'd like to. It's... these last few years have been tough. I'm not going to lie, Mercer, with my health and everything. It's been very, very rough for me, but I'm trying to get back on my feet now. Me and Mr. Know-It-All have some things planned, but unfortunately, Mr. Know-It-All then just had a bunch of stuff happen all at once. So hopefully, he'll be feeling back to ready for business in January. The overall shape of the Union fleet ships never grew on me, though. I still wish they could retcon that. Yeah, I agree. They all look like the same ship, just different sizes. And, I don't know. Yeah, I think the quantum drive system is an interesting idea, but it looks a little weird. I think they need a total redesign. Let's see. Orville says, and the Grinch's heart grew 3 times when he watched the Orville. Grinch is Michael. Well, except that if your heart grew 3 sizes too big, you would die. Darren says, I think 4 nacelle Star Trek ships are stupid if there isn't obvious or stated reason for them having 4 nacelles, like Constellation class and the Prometheus. And Merce says, yes, I saw the call sheets. Okay, you personally saw the call sheets. I didn't know you worked in Hollywood, and I didn't know you worked for Fuzzy Door. But yeah, because somehow you've managed to scoop then every media outlet that there is, Mercer. And so, why doesn't anybody else know this? And Orville says Mercer Create is Captain Mercer. I don't have a problem with the Union Fleet all being similar in design, just with different sizes. It's not my issue. I just don't like the design itself, at least the aft half. Well, I agree that the aft half is the big problem there. I actually, yeah, I kind of like the arrowhead front. I mean, it looks very Voyager-esque, but it doesn't look like just a rip-off of Voyager. You know, it just looks like it was inspired there. But yeah, but the quantum drive, like I said before, it just doesn't. It's interesting conceptually, but there's like it just doesn't look like a drive system. Kermit says my nephew has a name now. Well, that's good. Gorilla says Merry Christmas, everyone. Hope everyone had a good Christmas. Although I will say I did geed with the presents this year. I assume you mean good. Merch says, I stopped watching Red One halfway through. Well, shame on you. Wait, so you threw away the admission for going to see a movie halfway through the movie, or is that streaming already? I enjoyed Red One. It was silly, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't as good as Violent Night. Got a book on the making of the film Tenet. I still haven't seen Tenet because when I was going to finally see Tenet, it had just been removed from Max or whatever streaming service it was on. So, yeah, so I still haven't seen it. I would like to see them redesign the components so that there's a moving part, like something that spins or rotates. Yeah, I could see them doing something like that. Like if you took the bands of the quantum drive and had them do like a crisscross kind of thing and then had it spin. That might be cool. Orville saying Merry Christmas, Bird of Prey 5. Yes. It was streaming. Okay. I like the theories of time travel and Tenet. I generally, I have to turn my brain off whenever it comes to any movie that deals with time travel. Because maybe I just know a little too much. Because time travel is not possible. It's whenever Star Trek does it, I kind of got to roll my eyes. When, they did it in Avengers Endgame, when they do it in Back to the Future, any kind of movie, TV show, whatever, that deals in time travel, you're doing something that is in fact impossible. But, I understand people want to, like the idea because it makes for some fun science fiction. I just have a very tough time accepting it, so I have to turn off my brain. Let's see. Red One is streaming on several platforms. I got 2 books on interesting but useless facts. Oh, well, that's all you need, Kermit, is interesting but useless facts. And Swift -1 in the house. One day you're going to have a username that makes sense. Gorilla says, my kid loved his Pikachu pillow and Pokemon collector's book. He loved his Enderman and Warden, and he's excited about the drone with camera, but I told him the drone that he can't be peeping on the neighbors with it. But is he going to fly it in New Jersey? My big Christmas gift this year was a huge hardcover book of Frank Lloyd Wright architecture. I particularly like his Usonian house designs. I don't know what Usonian house designs are, but okay. I probably wouldn't get that excited about a book on architecture, but that's just me. Yeah. Tenet does not actually have time travel. Okay, but what you just said was, I like the theories of time travel in Tenet. And yes, they do have time travel. It's just a different way of presenting it, where people go forward and backward in time. However, that is nonsensical. And, you know, Orville says, time travel isn't possible. Michael is part of the Vulcan Science Directorate. Well, in that particular case, I think the Vulcan Science Directorate is right. Tenet is on Max, at least here. I don't know where here is. It was on Max before, but then they removed it. I haven't looked recently. Let me see. Yeah, when I search for it, it does not come up on Max. I'm looking there right now. I search for Tenet, and it comes up with Civil War, The Batman, The Revenant, The Dark Knight, you know, because obviously they're thinking Christopher Nolan there with some of that stuff, and yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like everywhere you can watch it right now, you have to pay for it. And I'm not paying to see the movie. Where it says, saw Godzilla -1 on my birthday, loved it. Yes, great movie. I think it's probably the best Godzilla film, and it should be a huge red flag to Hollywood that they could make that movie for the cost of a couple episodes of The Acolyte. When I was designing my own spaceship for something I was writing, I took inspiration from old Mississippi River paddle wheelers for propulsion ideas. Okay. Kermit says, apparently Mozart wrote a piece that used both hands and the nose. Never heard that. Got a miniature refrigerator and the Ninja Creamu ice cream maker. Ooh. That would be nice. Make some homemade ice cream. Haven't had homemade ice cream in forever. Tenet does have people going backward because of reversed entropy. Yes, I understand. I get the concept, and the concept is it's absolute lunacy. And there's no such thing as reversed entropy, and you can't go backwards in time. You can go forward in time, but you can't go backwards in time. Scientifically sounding terms I barely understand is tight, yes. Time travel is possible. You can be transported 60 seconds into the future, and it only takes 60 seconds. Well, that is true. And of course, based on relativistic physics, with time dilation, you can actually stretch time a little bit. So where in 60 seconds, you might end up going 60 minutes, an hour. If the closer you get to the speed of light, the closer you get to an infinite amount of time, which is part of the reason that light speed is unattainable by anything other than, actual light. Because once you reach that speed, it's almost like warp 10. Time equals 0 at that point. And so you can, your perception of time would instantaneously disappear. It says, I'm from Sweden. Well, apparently in Sweden, you are blessed because we do not have it on any non-paying service in the U.S. Kermit says, that's the only fact I know. That's not true. You know lots of facts. That's just the only fact from that book you probably know. I think New Jersey's a little bit out of range. Yeah, but, you just got to make sure. I got a unique idea for space travel. You know how a battery flews to another battery when the piles are the same and facing each other. You know, a battery flies, I assume as flies, to another battery when the piles are the same and facing each other. No. I I I do not. Are you talking about magnets or are you talking about batteries? Because I've never seen a battery just fly to another battery. Absolute lunacy is underrated. Well, there is that. And Kermit says also Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas to you. Darren says, I'm ignoring your ham-handed technobabble. Well, then I'll ignore your irrationality. I meant poles. Are you talking... Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Mercer. Because then you say batteries like a 9-volt to a 9-volt. I've never seen a 9-volt battery fly to another 9-volt battery. So I'm not sure what you mean. Not really read the books yet. I just looked loosely. Gotcha. I always thought, like the one thing that I like the idea of a fast and light travel that utilized a Einstein-Rosen bridge to open up to basically rip a bridge into the universe so that it would open up like a little portal and the ship would fly through it and the portal would close behind the ship. And I know stuff like this has been done before. And so the way that I kind of envisioned it designed is, a lot of people, like, you think about old school sailing vessels, right? And you have the masts that come off of the ship. And then from the masts, you have the rigging and all that, and you put sails out and all that. So what I was thinking of is that you have a 4 primary mast system on a spaceship. So a mast on the top, bottom, left, and right. And then the mast would deploy like an arm and the 4 arms of the 4 masts would all converge in front of the ship. And when they did, they would create somehow through the techity-tech, a intense gravitational field. And then as the 4 arms pulled apart, it would tear open this Einstein-Rosen bridge. And then the mast would or the poles on the end of the mast would unfold around the ship and then reconverge behind the ship. So that it basically opened up this portal and then pulled the portal across the ship and then closed the portal at the back of the ship. Okay, so my idea is that if each star has its own gravitational number, they can line up the ship with the star and adjust the gravitational number of the ship to match the stars, and it would fly right there. Okay, but there's no mechanism. I mean, look, it just depends on the type of fiction you're writing. If you're going for, science fantasy type thing like Star Wars, then you can just say whatever you want, and but don't try to go into detail explaining it at all if it's not going to make sense. Mercer is stealing Nermal's ideas. Well, yeah, I think, but what a lot of people don't realize, Nermal has been controlling Mercer's mind for some time. We would probably end up doing portal travel if we actually want to get anywhere, or more than likely we'll just become robots and travel the stars. Well, I don't think we will become robots. We already have robots traveling the stars. We have two robots that have just left the solar system, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. But and it's not a matter of wanting to get anywhere. It's a matter of what is physically possible within this universe, to which we don't know the full extent of what is and isn't physically possible. Other than things that are logically inconsistent, I think we can safely say are impossible. And true time travel is one of those things. You run in anytime, if there's paradoxes involved, then it's not possible. A true paradox, I mean, something like the grandfather paradox or something like that. Because if you go back in time and you do anything that alters the course of history, then you've basically violated every law of logic and physics that there is. And you can't, and despite what they like to do in some science fiction, you can't just violate the laws of physics. If your batteries are pulled to another battery, it means they're experiencing a short circuit or a strong magnetic attraction. This can happen if the positive and negative terminals of the batteries are touching or very close, or if there's a metal object bridging the gap between them. Okay, so now but the thing is, so if you're talking about electromagnetism, that's great, but gravity doesn't work the same way as electromagnetism, at least not that we can see. And I think that that's it's just trying to, if you just want to say, well, the ship goes really fast to other stars, okay, you should just leave it at that, because if you're going to try to, the problem is that if you explain it the way you did, then kind of like if you watch a sci-fi movie from like the 1950s and listen to their technical explanations of some of the stuff, and you bust up laughing because you realize that wow, didn't these people have educations back then? One of my favorites, even though it's not a good example of an old sci-fi movie, would be Plan 9 from Outer Space and Solar Benite. Solar Benite was this ultimate weapon that the aliens were concerned that humanity was on the verge of discovering. And so the concept of Solar Benite was that, he says, first, man lived in relative peace, and then he started developing weapons, and then he built a bomb, and then a bigger bomb, and then eventually he developed the ability to split the atom, to destroy matter itself, right? So Solar Benite is taking that to the next level, where we've actually learned to explode particles of sunlight. Now, if he had stopped the explanation right there, he might have had something, but, at least it wouldn't have sounded as silly. But then he goes on this long-winded explanation about how if you set off a Solar Benite bomb on the Earth, then you explode particles of sunlight on the Earth, then then the explosion will then go back to the sun, riding the stream of solar particles from the Earth to the sun, blow up the sun, and then the sun will send out a Solar Benite explosion out in all directions everywhere that sunlight goes, and eventually destroy the entire universe. Merch says, 10 is a good movie. It's very interesting how one team that goes backwards can inform the other team going forward. Well, I'm sure it's an interesting film. I mean, look, I do think Christopher Nolan is a little overrated as a director, but he is a good director. Nolan's next film is The Odyssey. Okay. Logic is a wreath of pretty flowers which smell bad. Yes, indeed. How does Disney's 2025 film slate look to you? Well, let's see. They've got 3 Marvel films, all of which I am very much looking forward to. So there's that. I don't really care about movies like Snow White and stuff. That obviously isn't a movie for me. And so I don't know. I'd have to. Let me see. I don't know any other big movies from Disney. Disney movies 2025. Let's see. So I don't know how accurate this is because it's on Wikipedia, but let's see if I can. 2022, 2023, 2024. All right. So we got Captain America: Brave New World. Looking forward to that. Snow White. Don't care. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Road Trip. That sounds stupid. The Amateur. Oh, that's that interesting spy film. That one maybe. I might watch that one. Thunderbolts, looking forward to it. Lilo and Stitch, the live action version, do not care. I have not seen a single of these Disney live action movies. Elo, which is, or Lio, or however you say his name, which is the new Pixar film about the kid who accidentally becomes the ambassador to Earth. Maybe, but I'm not really excited about it. Fantastic Four: First Steps, my most anticipated film of the year. Freakier Friday, do not care. Tron Ares, I am looking forward to Tron Ares. Predator Badlands. So, I don't know, Prey was really good, so it could be good. Zootopia 2, now I did really like the first Zootopia, so I may give that one a try. Avatar, Fire and Ash, do not care. Hoppers, I don't know anything about that one. Avengers, Doomsday, we're into 2026 now, so I'll stop there. So yeah, so there's a couple there that definitely looking forward to, and a few that I either didn't know about or don't care about. The classic Twilight Zone's time slip episodes, like Last Flight 7th, is made up of phantoms, and among my favorites, no techno babble, just people dealing with time travel. Well, I think, honestly, Darren, you're onto something there, because I think that time travel stories are best if we don't try to explain how time travel works, because time travel doesn't work. So I think that, yeah, if you have something where the characters don't even understand how they ended up going back in time or whatever, that's fine. And then they're just trying to deal with it. And Twilight Zone is like half science, half supernatural, just heard scientists find a pear-shaped atomic nuclei that could possibly indicate that going back in time would be impossible. I don't know anything about a pear-shaped atomic nuclei, but I can say definitively that since reverse time travel, going backwards in time, would violate the laws of logic, it is impossible, or the universe is not logically consistent. And if the universe is not logically consistent, then quite literally, science doesn't make sense anyway. Because science, the fundamental primary assumption of science is that the universe is logically consistent. Captain America 4, Snow White, Thunderbolts, Avatar 3. Well, you left out Fantastic Four. And yeah, Avatar 3, I thought Avatar's 2 was... I think it's hilarious that so many people go to see these movies because they're so bad. But, I get they're beautifully done. And so it's like it's almost like the uncanny valley. With the whole thing of spectacle over substance, it seems that, people want good stories, but there gets to a point where you get enough spectacle to where people don't care. And so they'll go see the movie even though there's no good story. And Avatar is a great example of that. When Marvel starts making good movies again, I'll start getting excited for them again. Well, you can't really know if they're going to make a good movie unless you go see it. Odd Librarian out says, Merry Christmas. How you doing, ma'am? Hope you are well. Godzilla Minus One was interesting. I kind of guessed that both the plans that they wanted to use against Godzilla would fail. Well, if plans just worked the way they were supposed to, the movie would have been a lot shorter. Old movies I'd like to see remade into better films. Logan's Run, The Incredible Shrinking Man, and Soylent Green. I would like to see The Last Starfighter remade into a better film. Just uploaded some AI Sun covers. Do you want to check them out? I will check them out, youngster. I don't know if they're any good, but I will check them out. Robert says, Salty Tracker, hello there tonight. So I found out from Overlord DVD that Star Trek Discovery is not canon. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. That's just wishful thinking on the part of people like Doomcock, and I saw Mecha Random posted something on that. You know, a bunch of the formerly Fandom Menace are all excited about the idea that Star Trek Discovery is not canon because of the 2 seconds of Klingon shots in the beginning of the last episode of Lower Decks, which is kind of ironic in that a lot of people try to argue that Lower Decks isn't canon. So if Lower Decks isn't canon, how could it decanonize Discovery? And if Lower Decks is canon, then are you willing to accept everything that comes with Lower Decks being canon just to try to come up with the idea that the Klingons aren't canon? Logan's Run wasn't a bad film. I don't think Logan's Run was a bad film as much as it was just a film that would have benefited from more modern visual filming and effects. Darren says, I was fascinated by the concept of the kamikaze fighter who chickened out being the main character of a Godzilla film. Yeah, it was, you know, the thing about Godzilla Minus One is that it's really the first time in the entirety of the Godzilla franchise, which has been more movies than I can count, and the Godzilla franchise makes the MCU look small. But the Godzilla franchise has always suffered from one really obvious, glaring problem, and that is that we go there to watch the monster fights, and basically the story revolving around human actors is lame. And that's consistent throughout the entire franchise. Maybe the first one a little less so because of the shock value of seeing, you know, the aftermath of Godzilla's rampage. But for the most part, we don't go to Godzilla movies for a gripping story about people. We go there to see basically WWE, except that the wrestlers are 30 stories tall. And Godzilla Minus One actually made, if you removed Godzilla from the movie, it would still be a good movie. And that's an amazing thing. I don't think you could say that about any other Godzilla film. And glory to you and your house. Okay. Daniel saying hi to Penny. Penny saying hi to Yexter. So yeah, I'm still waiting for Christmas dinner. I know the wife is making it right now. Unfortunately, she's running a little bit behind. Oh, by the way, so speaking of movies, I will tell you, so the wife and I went this morning to see Nosferatu. Now, if you're interested in Nosferatu, I will tell you this. It is probably the scariest, most disturbing vampire movie I have ever seen in my life. And so, and that is both a good thing and for some people, I'm sure, a very bad thing. That movie is a tough one to get through. It is graphic, it is brutal, but And the funny thing is, not always just because of like blood and guts on screen. There really isn't that much of it. It's more because of the psychological horror of what's going on, and just the fact that all these people are just going, and it feels like a descent into madness as you watch this movie. It takes the source material extremely seriously. There's not really a joke in the whole movie, and and if you've seen the 1922 film, 1922 silent film of the same name, it follows that story, and I wouldn't have realized that except for the wife and I watched the 1922 film just a couple of days ago, and the ending is in fact identical. So if you haven't seen the 1922 film and you want to be surprised, don't watch the 1922 film before you go see Nosferatu in theaters, because it is the exact same ending. Maybe it's a little easier to understand the ending because the new film is a talkie, but the actual story is the same. I thought the choice making -1 Godzilla smarter, so he's less beatable seemingly against the ragtag post-World War II Japanese was also interesting. I think almost every creative choice they made on that movie was a good choice. Older movie remakes generally don't turn out very well. Example, Rollerball remake and The Death. I don't know what The Death is, but I think that I think to say that because you can come up with a couple of old movies that were not remade well, doesn't mean that all old movies that are remade are bad. For example, Al Pacino's classic Scarface was in fact a remake of an older film. So, remakes can be good, remakes can be bad. It just depends on the people behind it. Race movies. Okay. My brother made us a Christmas roast with mashed potatoes. Well, that's what we're having, a rib roast with potatoes and I assume something else. I'm a huge Robert Eggers fan, so I'm going to see Nosferatu. I've owned the original 1922 in all formats, VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray. Nosferatu is the superior German version of Dracula. Well, and it's funny, that Darren, so since you've seen, obviously, the classic, I would say this. This Nosferatu, compared to, say, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, is like the 1930s Bela Lugosi Dracula compared to Nosferatu. That's the level of difference in that how much scarier Orlok is compared to Dracula. Orlok in this is terrifying. He doesn't say that much. He's not on screen that much. In fact, you only see his face, other than for like a couple of frames of film at a time, you only really get a good look at his face in the last scene of the movie. And honestly, the creepiest thing about him, which they couldn't do in the 1922 film because, early 20th century sensibilities versus 21st century, is the way that that Orlok feeds is just disturbing. And it's not even like it's not graphic. You know what he's doing, but it's not like they're showing like fangs going into skin or anything like that. But it's more the sound design. And oh man, it is just absolutely disturbing. He also made M&M cake, which I'll have tomorrow. Awesome. Robert says, Star Trek Dracula is public domain, so people can make bank from doing their own Dracula movies. Yes, absolutely. And Nosferatu was a movie inspired by Dracula, obviously. In fact, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure Darren knows, there was some legal dispute over Nosferatu when it first came out in the 20s. But Dracula, I don't believe, was public domain at that point. But now Dracula is. So yes, if you want to do a Dracula movie, but you know what? You don't have to do, and Nosferatu is proof of this, you don't have to do a Dracula movie to do a good vampire movie. And Gorilla's censored shots, thoughts put censored in the comments. Not sure why. Did you see Karate Kid Legends trailer? No. And honestly, now that you mention that, I don't care. Because, look, The Karate Kid was a fun enough movie. I saw the first two of them in theaters. Do I ever want to go back? You know, I didn't care about the revival show, and I certainly don't care about a Karate Kid's Legends, because I don't think The Karate Kid was that big an impact on my life. I saw Shadow of the Vampire. It was about filming of Nosferatu, where the actor playing Nosferatu was actually a vampire. Is that the one that had Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck? And if so, one of the funny things is that Willem Dafoe is in this Nosferatu film, but he does not play the vampire. He plays their version of Van Helsing. Darren says, Max Schreck from the 1922 Nosferatu gave me nightmares when I was a kid. Oh, absolutely. He was creepy. Orlok is different from Dracula in that he's basically a living shadow. He doesn't turn into bats and wolves. His vermin look is also more disturbing than other versions. Well, and another thing about Orlok that's very different than Dracula is that Dracula, when he is in his, primary form that we know him as, is supposed to appear suave and debonair and very sophisticated and, in fact, sexually attractive for women. But Orlok is just evil. He is pure, unadulterated evil. And so, and this Orlok is definitely the same in that respect. Ross Dogs, Broken Spirit says, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. Shadow of the Vampire 2000 with Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich. Yeah, so Willem Dafoe is in this Nosferatu film, and but he does not play the creature. My other favorite cinematic vampires was always Chris Sarandon's Jerry Dandridge from the 1986 Fright Night. I love that movie. It's a stupid cheese fest of a film, but I absolutely love that movie. And I remember that was the very first movie night with Matthew, was when I got him to watch Fright Night as well as Dracula 2000. Did anyone laugh or cheer during Star Trek The Motion Picture showing? Are you talking about back in 1979? Yes. I was one of them. Salt Trek, the vampire effects in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel the spinoff were pretty monstrous. Dracula's true form in Blade 3 was also terrifying. Oh, Robert. Oh, young, naive fool. You have not seen this movie yet. Trust me. I will say, though, I did like Last Voyage of the Demeter. The Dracula in that film was basically a man-bat from DC Comics, good claustrophobic ship-based horror film. Never seen that one. Let's see. I liked when Bela Lugosi played. Is that when or who Bela Lugosi played in Plan 9? Well, in Plan 9 from Outer Space, Bela Lugosi simply played the old man. He wore his Dracula costume for some of the shots, but that was just test footage. That wasn't meant to be in the actual production. But since Lugosi had died, and Ed Wood wanted to capitalize on having Lugosi in the film, he just used every bit of footage that he could. And plus, then he used, I believe it was his, whatchamacallit, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it was the doctor, I don't remember, it was his dentist or his doctor or something that would fill in as the old man in Plan 9 because they needed him to appear in scenes that obviously they couldn't film Lugosi because he was dead, and so they had him wearing the cape but holding the cape up in front of his head. But the funny thing is, it was like obvious that he was several inches taller than Lugosi, and his hairline was different. So, chiropractor, thank you, yes. But yeah, so if you like if you like the disturbing aspect of vampirism, this new Nosferatu is right up your alley. If you want cheesy, silly vampires like from Blade, yeah, don't go see this. It will give you nightmares. Because, like I said, this is the most terrifying vampire I've ever seen in my life. And that includes, and by the way, Max Schreck is up there from the original Nosferatu, because even though I didn't find the original Nosferatu as compelling, because I have a tough time getting into silent films, but Max Schreck himself is the stuff of nightmares if you see him from that. Odd Librarian Out says a great vampire story is Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan LaFanu. I have not heard of that one at all. As far as, like, there's the Anne Rice vampires, which are a little different. Definitely not terrifying creatures, but, aside from the fact that it's disturbing how callous they are about human life. Merch says, I've given consideration to the latest Ghostbusters films. As a fan of the original, I guess I liked when they do for used on the original cast, but the films need a sharper comic edge. I would have to respectfully disagree with that, because the original Ghostbusters didn't have a sharp comedic edge. It was a comedy, but more in the abstract. I mean, because it's not like the entire movie was just zany jokes. And so and I actually think that the newer Ghostbusters films live up to that legacy very well. Cannot wait for the new Wallace and Gromit film, January 3rd. I could not care less about Wallace and Gromit, sorry. So I tell you, the vampire from Salem's Lot looked a lot like Nosferatu, a good Stephen King movie. I've never seen Salem's Lot. It's one of those movies that I've been meaning to see forever and ever, and I just never get around to it. So I would definitely like to. Yeah. But Max Schreck, the amazing thing is that he looks that creepy in 1922. Darren says, I'd like to see a good werewolf movie. There are so few compelling and horrifying with good special effects these days. I kind of miss the body horror of The Howling and American Werewolf. Wolfman, the upcoming film, looks interesting. I don't know if you've seen the trailers for it, Darren, but it looks like they're kind of showing you from their werewolf's perspective what it's like to be transformed and to kind of lose touch with reality and so why you would attack people you love and stuff is because you start to not recognize them and stuff. And it looks interesting, but we'll see. It might be stupid, it might be good. Daniel says, I liked vampires, but then I saw Twilight. Well, Twilight's not vampires. I like Silver Bullet, good werewolf. You know, I kind of like, and it's a stupid movie, but I kind of like the Jack Nicholson one, Wolf. That being accident scene, the beaming accident in the scene in motion picture still gives me nightmares. That was, I remember when I was a kid, and I saw that in theaters, and that was disturbing. Barlow and Salem Slot didn't look like Orlok in the novel. In the 1978 made-for-TV movie, the guy who played the Andorian ambassador on TOS played Barlow. Oh, okay. Ben Dover says, whatever happened to that simpleton life with Matthew? Well, he's not a simpleton, but he, we were doing that movie night thing for a long time and really enjoyed it. But then he got an opportunity to become a youth pastor, but he couldn't quit his day job, so to speak. It wasn't paying him that much money, so basically he had to make a choice between continuing to do the movie night thing or to versus being a youth pastor, and he really wanted to do the youth pastor gig. So I don't begrudge him over it or anything. But I do miss him. And he still does stuff on his channel every now and then. He's been doing a watch through of, I don't remember what it is, but something with Professor Brainy Specs. Let's see. See, they're young, wrap themselves around the cerebral cortex, making the victim extremely susceptible to suggestion. Yes, but the Seti eel is not a vampiric creature. Thank you, Gorilla. Yeah, Babylon 5. I couldn't remember what show they were doing. So, and to which I say, I hope that goes well for them. I know Professor Brainy Specs, he's none too fond of me most of the time, so I generally leave them alone. But I definitely miss having Matthew around. We never got to see a Galaxy class take on a Warbird. Well, good thing, because the Galaxy class would have been blown away. The Warbird is a vessel made for combat. The Galaxy class is a vessel made for diplomatic cruises. I recommend Last Voyage of the Demeter, or how he's Demeter, on Paramount Plus. Basically, it takes the first chapter of the novel Dracula, makes that the whole movie. I was surprised on how good it was. Okay. Well, I will try to remember that, Darren. You'll have to remind me a couple of times probably before I can scrounge up the time to watch it. Thanks to Omni's suggestion, I have been watching Knight Rider. Well, I don't know who Omni is, but yeah, it's a good show. I watched Knight Rider religiously when it was first on, and really enjoyed it. Really wanted a Trans Am back then. Yeah, let me see. Gotta double check with the wife. Oh, wow. You know you're tired when you can't spell ETA. What happened to Piano Dean? No, Piano Dean still got his channel, and I believe he's still performing at Crocodile Rocks in South Carolina, or is it North Carolina? Myrtle Beach. I always forget which Carolina that's in. And so if you're ever in the Myrtle Beach area, I highly recommend you go to Crocodile Rocks and check out Piano Dean live. Omnicast is the Jeopardy champ. Okay, the Jeopardy champ's name is Omnicast. What kind of name? Is it a computer? I think the Romulan Daredevils is a bunch of hot air. Reminds me of a Russian submarine, slow and noisy. I don't know, Darren. I'd be willing to bet that the Daredevils against a Galaxy class, you would have one less Galaxy class. Gorilla Sensor Shot Thought says south. Not sure why. My all-time favorite horror film is The Fly. Well, which version? Ben Dover says, Live with Matthew thought Picard Season 1 was better than TNG. That is enough for me to test him. Did he say that? But then that's terrible of him. The Howling is a good werewolf movie. Robert Picardo plays the main antagonist who's actually very scary. I've seen The Howling. For Star Trek Jeopardy. Well, you just said Jeopardy. And we don't talk about that show here. Sorry. I try not to, but I still have some sour feelings about what happened there. It's in South Carolina. Thank you. If the Daredevils was really such hot crap, Tomalak wouldn't have backed down at the end of The Defector. Well, except that I don't think... See, I think the difference is that I don't think Tomalak really wanted a war. I think that he was more just into blowing hot air. But I don't like the way the Romulans or the Klingons were depicted in TNG anyway, so there's that. The Jeff Goldblum fly, okay. So the gross one. And I apologize. Well, it's all right. Just, like I said, some things, they just, they sting still. All right. Anything else? What do we got? I'm working on trying to compile what I think the best and worst movies I saw this year were. It's going to be a tough one, because the wife and I saw a lot of movies this year. Thanks to that AMC subscription service, it actually made it so where we could do that. I think we saw more movies this year than we've seen in almost any year previous. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Nosferatu, Craven the Hunter, Y2K, and Wicked. Let's see. Well, it's Galaxy class and 3 bird of preys against 2 warbirds, yeah. And the Klingons are no slouch, and even though the birds of prey are not particularly sturdy ships, the Klingons are definitely no slouch in weapons. And Picard even said, that there's no doubt that the Romulans would probably win the engagement, but they would take a lot of damage. I miss you running the game, truth be told. Well, I appreciate that, Mercer, but we can drop that subject, please. Next month from Fan Home, I'm going to get Kirk's USS Farragut for the alternate Balance of Terror episode of Strange New Worlds. Oh, cool. I like how Enterprise powered down all the factions. How they powered down... Are you talking about how Picard talked everybody down from the brink of blowing each other away? Because, the problem I have with Star Trek The Next Generation is that's pretty much all Picard does. Don't get me wrong, I like TNG overall as a show, but it's very frustrating that, TNG is like wash, rinse, repeat of some kind of crisis comes up, the Enterprise shows up, and they come this close to getting into a fight, and then they manage to avoid it at the end. We can hear your rat dog licking herself. Well, she's right here. Salty Tracker, the warship Enterprise D From yesterday's Enterprise. The Warship Enterprise D, I thought, I understand the show has a limited budget, but the problem is that the Warship Enterprise D just looked like the Enterprise D. Now, the one thing you could say is that, because they did talk about how many troops the Enterprise D in the warship configuration could carry. So instead of families, it was basically a gigantic troop transport. It was a planetary invasion force ship, which that kind of makes sense. But I'm still, the combat in TNG was definitely one of its weaker aspects as a show. I like the ships on Enterprise were all less powerful. I like the ships on Enterprise were all less powerful in Enterprise. Well, it makes sense. It's a prequel show, so they should be. That's one of my problems with the Star Wars prequels, is that it didn't feel like it was really earlier in time. It just felt like it was cleaner. What do you think about Reach for the Stars with Toy Boat? Okay, now I'm not sure what you mean. So, Reach for the Stars with... Oh, the song. I don't know that I know that song. That's a song. And Robert says, yesterday's Enterprise was pretty badass. I thought it was a good episode, but, and again, I get that TNG always just teased the combat. And, the thing that's frustrating is, like, in the few episodes that you get some, and that one actually had a little bit of combat, but, all of a sudden Birds of Prey are like the size of a Galaxy-class starship for some reason, which I get it's an alternate timeline, but they're still Birds of Prey. Haven't seen Normal since Sunday. I miss her. Oh, I'm sorry. In order for me to imagine the real 1701, I have to mentally upscale it. It doesn't work for me if I don't do that. I don't quite follow you, Darren. Are you saying you need to imagine that it's bigger? Or are you saying that the technology is not advanced enough because, like, you look at Enterprise? They also made Banned from Argo. Okay. Do the Romulans still use that overpowered plasma weapon from Dawns of Terror that one-shot ships and asteroids at close range? Sadly, no. And the, the funny thing is, like, if you look at episodes like The Deadly Years, they reused shots of the Birds of Prey firing that plasma weapon at the Enterprise, but they severely depowered it, right? But it's also kind of understandable because if, as the Enterprise quickly figured out in Balance of Terror, is that the simple way to survive a battle against that kind of weaponry is to move fast, because all you have to do is stretch the distance between you and the time, or stretch out the time, I guess, between you and the impact of the plasma torpedo. And it does negligible damage. Like when the plasma torpedo hit the Enterprise in Balance of Terror, it did basically no damage. And yes, Darren, I'm well aware that cavorts are huge birds of prey in both yesterday's Enterprise and the regular TNG continuity. I just think they're stupid. I mean, that would be like if you had a Volkswagen Bug the size of a motorhome. It just doesn't make sense. Why is it that Spock in Strange New World seems like he's dumb? I don't know, because I don't think he does. Sidetrack, of course, can't forget the future Enterprise. I'm not sure what you mean there. In TOS, he was smart as F. Yeah. I mean, if you're saying that, like, because the way that Leonard Nimoy portrayed Spock and the way that Ethan Peck portrays Spock is Ethan Peck's Spock is a little younger, a little less mature, but I don't think he's dumb. And I think that that's just, honestly, and just like, look, I'm fully aware that I'm biased against TNG. You know, Darren loves to talk about that, with absolute glee, that I'm just biased against TNG. I admit my bias against TNG. But I think that if you're just going to say, oh, well, Spock in Strange New Worlds is dumb, I think you're saying that because you want him to be exactly like the way he was in TOS. Well, sorry, TOS was TOS. This isn't TOS. That show, the Leonard Nimoy's passed away, and, this is a different take on, or a different time in Spock's life, and honestly, it's a different timeline. So, yeah, Spock is different. It's just D and all good things. That's also an incredibly dumb ship. Because, I mean, think about it. All Good Things takes place later than we see the Sovereign class in the movies. And if that's at least the 3 nacelle D. And so if by just hooking up a third nacelle to a Galaxy-class ship, you can put on a phaser cannon that just rips through Klingons like that, then why can't the Sovereign class do it? And then again, the Sovereign class did just eviscerate a Borg sphere with one volley, of torpedoes. 1701 has to be bigger than 300 meters approximately, and it's all due to that neck. Its width is the length of a Nissan Versa, and there are windows on it. Well, see, I don't think that starships should have windows, period, but I get what you're saying. I guess since I never served on a ship, I don't think about that as much as far as the scale of the ship. And honestly, the neck, to me, was always just there to attach the saucer section from the secondary hull. And, so you have turbo lifts going through it and observation lounges and stuff. But other than that, there's just not much there. So having it be the width of a Nissan Versa is not really that big a deal. Because as long as there's enough room for a turbo lift to go through and for you to stand there and look out the window, you're good. Darren says, I agree that the forts are stupid. Somebody note the date and time. Darren and I are agreeing. And I would expect Strange New World Spock to be less refined than Nimoy Spock. Yes. And the funny thing is, actually, honestly, if you compare, and I know this was intentional, look at Spock from like the first 3 or 4 episodes of TOS, right? Including the cage. Like if you look at Spock in the cage, in Where No Man Has Gone Before, in the Man Trap, etc., you see a very different character than Spock in the second half of season 1 and season 2 and season 3 and the films. And so Ethan Peck's Spock is closer to the cage than he is to, say, Star Trek II. The future Enterprise D and all good things. Gotcha. And if they had made a balcony on the Enterprise D bridge like what Gene wanted, it would be very cool. I don't see how that would be cool. That seems redonkulous. Darren says, I'm not crazy about 3 nacelle ships like the Dreadnoughts. Roddenberry rules dictated that nacelles work in pairs. Yeah, honestly, I think the three nacelled look is not as good as the four, two, or one nacelled looks. And and I do like, they even I don't know if you caught this there, but in the last episode of Lower Decks, they talked about the fact that a one nacelle ship can have a stable warp field, but it's difficult. And so they kind of made it sound like they really are meant to work in pairs. TNG started getting good around season 3. I would agree with that. Although there were definite, like, if you look at season 1 to me was an absolute craptastic season. Season 2, there were a lot of major improvements. Unfortunately, the biggest improvement they rolled back on, that was Dr. Pulaski. But there were a lot of major improvements to the show in season 2. But it still wasn't quite there. But then season 3 is where I think the show found its footing. Have you seen where the Titanic is starting to fall apart? No, but, considering how long it's been sitting on the bottom of the ocean, doesn't really surprise me. Yeah, proper TOS Spock on the show tells several episodes into the first season. Exactly. And so why would you expect him to show up before the first season? I really love how the models that Greg Jen built for free for Trials and Tribulations. He built the Enterprise Station K7 and the IKS Groth. Okay. I did not know that those were all practical, but I'll take your word for it. The only thing worse than a three nacelled ship is, to me, is a single nacelled ship. I would rather see a single nacelled ship than a three nacelled ship. Captain Joller says, "Merry Christmas." Thank you, Captain. And right back at you, my friend. Windows are on the surface ships. Windows are on surface ships, but not usually below the weather deck. Yeah, but these are, starships are more like submarines. If you think about it, if the window on an aircraft carrier breaks, it's not going to cripple the ship. But if you had windows on a submarine and one of them broke, it's game over, right? And so, unless you have the compartments sealed. And same thing with a starship, right? You could have explosive decompression if one window broke. Robert says, speaking of Dr. Pulaski, this past Saturday on MeTV, they showed Is There in Truth No Beauty, a great episode. That's a good episode, and of course, obviously, same actress. What is your favorite TNG episode? Man, that's a tough one, Mercer, because it depends on my mood. Sometimes I would say Q Who, sometimes I would say Best of Both Worlds Part 1, because those are the two best appearances of the Borg, in my opinion. Sometimes I would say Chain of Command. I really, really, not only is Captain Jellicoe awesome, but it was Patrick Stewart's absolute A-game as far as his performance there. And you have David Warner as that Cardassian that was just incredible. Sometimes I would say The Inner Light, just as far as a purely dramatic episode. But honestly, I would probably, like right now, I'm probably thinking Chain of Command. And there are times when I really do like All Good Things. It was a good finale. When we watched TNG on my old submarine, they used to say, "That must be some damn good glass." Yes, indeed. Well, of course, transparent aluminum, which apparently shatters. Poor Borg got neutered after Best of Both Worlds. They absolutely did. And in fact, and it even got retconned into Best of Both Worlds with First Contact, right? Because they turn the Borg into just mindless zombies in First Contact, and then we find out that they were mindless zombies during Best of Both Worlds, even though they didn't appear to be. But yeah, I did not like. I think they did the Borg dirty. I really do. Malfi says, in all good things, I wonder how they got around the whole going past warp 9 unless it turns you into a salamander. Simple. Bad writing. So what did happen to the Enterprise E? We deserve an explanation. And we will never get one. At least I hope not, because I don't want them to do... because, the problem is, if they actually tried to fill in that gap, no matter what they did, it would be a disappointment. Kind of like when they showed us the Kessel run in Solo. That doctor gave me a pill. I grew me a new kidney. Yes, indeed. You wouldn't use aluminum for pressure hull, though, so don't think they use transparent aluminum for the windows on TNG. Well, of course, in First Contact, Picard says that the windows are all force fields, which is even worse. Because if the windows are all force fields, then, power failure and everybody dies. But I actually, I don't know about canonical sources, but like in Star Trek books, they always refer to the windows and stuff as being transparent aluminum, but I don't know if there's anything canonical on that. Let's see. No, it's not Work's fault. Oh, other than it's Warp's fault, I assume you mean. I think they simply recalibrated the warp scale again for TNG All Good Things, hence Warp 13. More than that would be a good, fan-made explanation. And the truth is, it was bad writing. They just wanted to sound faster, and they didn't want to go, it's coming in at warp 9.9997, because that kind of thing sounds stupid. Captain Joller says, H. Robert says, we don't even know what happened to the Enterprise B. I'm pretty sure it was destroyed before Thursday. It probably rated into something. I'm not sure what you mean. Sorry, typing on the phone. I understand. I can buy a game on Xbox called Star Trek Resurgence. Do you know if it's any good? Not 100% sure. But, the track record of Star Trek video games is not good. So I'm going to write down... I'm going to write dome of my novel. I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. I assume you mean you're going to write some of your novel. All right, Mercer, good luck. Darren says, I rather like Warp 13. I do. Look, I like the idea that... I think the Warp 10 speed limit was a dumb idea in the first place, of trying to suggest that, the scale between Warp 9 and Warp 10 is infinity. So I would agree that, I like the sound of that. Like, even like from the original series, when Nomad was firing on the Enterprise and they lost maneuvering power, Scotty said he moved the power over to the shields. And then Kirk immediately went, Spock, what are the speed of those bolts? And he said approximately warp 15. And so it's like, okay, so we can't outrun them. And so there's many examples of that. But then they had to change everything because Gene wanted to. I meant he rammed the Enterprise E into something because he's Worf. Gotcha. In one of the TNG episodes, it was confirmed that they used transparent aluminum for the windows. So there you go. Salt Jerry, what happened to the crazy Canadian Asian Muslim woman's best choice fellow? He still shows up every once in a while, like when he's not chopping up dead animals. And but he is, newly married to the Asian Muslim woman from the USSR. So, I don't fault him for not spending all his time with us because he's got his Asian Muslim wife from the USSR. And Darren wants to know what episode. Let's see. In theory, yeah, so in the episode of the television series Star Trek The Next Generation titled In Theory, Data scans the transparent aluminum of the Enterprise to determine that the ship and its crew were being affected by spatial deformations in subspace. So I'm looking up. Let's see. There we go. And then try to find. All right. So, Observation Lounge. This is from the episode In Theory. I'm reading directly from the transcript. Worf. Captain, the furniture is all piled up by the window. I do not understand. Riker says, are you picking anything up, Data? Data says, I detect no unusual readings along the standard parameters. Curious, the transparent aluminum alloy of this window is exhibiting a pattern of transient electrical currents. Picard, explanation, the rate is characteristic of a subspace distortion. So there you go. So the TNG episode, In Theory, Data does in fact scan the transparent aluminum in the windows of the observation lounge. Okay, well, aluminum in the 24th century must be different than our present because aluminum has a crappy fatigue life. Yeah, I'm obviously transparent aluminum isn't literally just aluminum that you can see through. It's some other metallic substance that's way stronger than aluminum. I would go with you there, Darren. The one where the woman dies by getting stuck in the floor. Have you ever seen the Adam Savage video where he builds his own TOS captain's chair? I've not seen that one specifically. I've seen a few of his videos, not a ton. But no, I've seen it in my suggestions a couple of times. I always thought it would be nice if I could figure out a way to make a captain's chair into a recliner like this one for doing live streams and stuff. I think that would be cool. Let's see. Ken Jowler says, I got an off-brand Lego Akira class for Christmas. Yeah, I think, what are those things? The build blocks or whatever, the not Lego. By the way, for those that have been following the drama of the 3D print that I've been working on, we are now at 62% complete after 77 hours. So it is coming along. And you can actually, like, the eye holes are done, the nose part is done. And it's basically printed up to about here. I wouldn't mind seeing an alternate reality where the M5 Multitronic computer was deemed a success. That could be an interesting what-if scenario. Is LDG still around and streaming much? Is he back to working full-time? I haven't heard from him in a while. He hasn't popped over here since he kind of reneged on his promise of delivering Project Prometheus by a certain date. So I don't know what he's up to. And, I hope he's doing well. but I don't know, because he tends to delete everything he does on his channel almost immediately after he streams and stuff. Darren says LDG is a very busy man these days. Okay. Not sure if. And the wife says that dinner is ready, so I'm going to be wrapping it up here. So, Darren, when you say LDG is a busy man, why is that? Is Project Prometheus finally live? Because I haven't heard anything on it. I haven't heard about how the internet is free for everybody and all that. Can you make an evil, salty clone on that 3D printer of yours? Yeah, we can't make life forms on a 3D printer. I'm sure you know that. So what did you think of Johnny Depp's daughter's performance in Nosferatu? I didn't know Johnny Depp's daughter was in it. So I would say this. I mean, the performances across the board were good. Some of them very disturbing, but so I would say she did fine. So I'm assuming that she was the main female protagonist, Thomas's wife. But I don't know. Well, it's hot. Yes, indeed. Her last name is Depp. Well, you know what? I didn't sit there and study the credits, and I'm sure there's more than 2 people in the universe named Depp. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Nosferatu. Yeah, Lily Rose Depp. I did not realize that was her. Yeah, she was fine. She was the main female protagonist. Weird thing, like Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok was unrecognizable. And Nicholas Hoult, it's funny because he was Beast in the X-Men First Class movies. And of course, his next big role is going to be as Lex Luthor in the upcoming Superman film. And he's got some range. Unlike Keanu Reeves in Bram Stoker's Dracula, he was good. But yeah, the whole cast was really good. LDG is doing good. He's very busy and still pissed with me and has his foot up your butt because he had to listen to the Indian drum meme for 8 hours while he slept. I don't know what that's about. Salter also found out from Seven Gooley that Vincent Price's daughter lives in North Carolina. Okay. Love me some Vincent Price. Well, Vincent Price was an American horror icon. All right, so with that, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. So, Merry Christmas to you all. And yes, to pray. Oh, she wants to come over here because I said I'm going to wrap it up. I'm like, why is she freaking out? And then I realized I said I'm going to wrap it up. So thanks for hanging out with me, and we will continue this discussion maybe tomorrow. I'll talk to you later. Bye.